Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Golden Astrologer Podcast. This is Deb McBride, and I am broadcasting from lovely Escazú, Costa Rica on Sunday, November 7th in the year 2021. And I want to tell you that I am having a webinar next Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time till 8:30. It is on the fifth dimension Lemurian Reiki that I have been studying, and I invite all of you. It's only $20. You can register on my website and just go to thegoldenastrologer.com, book online, and you'll find the webinar right there. And this is a great opportunity to learn more about this. I think it's going to be really exciting and a lot of fun. In the meantime, how are you all feeling? How was that new moon for you? For a lot of people, it was agitating and restless due to the Uranian nature of it, due to the sun and the moon opposite Uranus. And what's happening is, when Uranus, like any other planet, gets triggered by a lunation like that, it's going to feel strange, and we have to assimilate energies that are foreign to us. Now, the people who were first dealing, the astrologers, of course, that were first dealing with these outer planets, Uranus being the first one, then Neptune, then Pluto, when they were trying to integrate this into the astrology that they were already doing, they were not considered positive forces, considered malefics. And malefic, I think, is a strong word, but it really means foreign. And it's not something that is available to us. Like we can't look up in the sky and point out Uranus with the naked eye. You can take your app and pretend you know where Uranus is, and your app on your phone or your iPad or whatever tablet you have that shows you the night sky, and you can see the general area that Uranus is in Taurus among all the other stars that are in Taurus, and you might be able to see those. But Uranus is so far away, and so is Neptune, and so is Pluto. They're very far out, that without a really high-powered telescope, you're not going to see it. And it's, especially if it's a cloudy night, even with a really high-powered telescope, you're probably not going to see it. So this is something that we're not looking up at, we're not pointing at, and we're not assimilating. We look at the moon, even though people say, oh, people get crazy under a full moon. Well, you can see that full moon, right? It's going to affect the tides and stuff, but this is a different energy. This is an energy that forces us to assimilate the Uranian energy, which is innovation and a little chaotic and a little restless and a little agitated. And, it's in a fixed sign. It wants to move. We don't know what to do with the energy. The best thing is to move your body. Like I went out for a good long walk the other day. I think it was the day before the new moon. And there was just a lot of restless energy. We went from the sun squaring Saturn in Aquarius, then moving into the opposition with Uranus. So there's this section of the zodiac in the fixed signs. And when we're dealing with fixed signs, we're dealing with Scorpio, Taurus, Aquarius, and Leo. When the moon passes through there or the planets pass through there in those zones, they are getting connected to Saturn and Uranus. Now, remember last year when we kept talking about Saturn and Pluto, and every time things went through the cardinal signs, which is Aries and Libra and Capricorn and Cancer, that's when you got triggered because you were getting Saturn and Pluto. Now you're getting Saturn and Uranus, and it's the fixed people that might be feeling this. And if you have planets in Aquarius or Leo or Taurus or Scorpio, you are more likely to feel this energy and feel the interesting dynamic that we've been dealing with all year from Saturn, which is the one that teaches us and is an authority figure, and we learn a lesson and we have to work hard and be responsible, to Uranus, which wants to break down the old structure of Saturn. And Uranus really does not want us to stay with the status quo. Saturn will make us feel like we want to stay with the status quo. Saturn will say, this doesn't feel safe. I'm not taking a leap of faith. And Uranus says, but you must. You must take that leap of faith. And so what we experienced from last Saturday to, and that was before the podcast, last Saturday to this Thursday, and I felt the energy dissipate on Friday. Thursday morning was different than Friday morning. Absolutely. And if you're paying close attention to it, as I am, you are going to notice that there is a shift, that there is this shift in energies. And then people said to me, yeah, I feel much better. And well, of course you did, because we moved out of, like, the sun and the moon were not like lighting up Uranus. That Uranus is an electric planet. Saturn says, I have to be good and focused and determined and be ambitious and achieve something, but in a very slow and productive way. Uranus says, throw it out the window, take a risk, take a leap. And so each of us had something stirring inside of us that says, you can't stay with the status quo and believe the old self anymore. Because Saturn, even though it's sitting in Aquarius, which is the Uranian sign, Saturn is saying, I like it. I like it the way it was, but what if I fail? But what if I fell flat on my face? But what if I'm rejected? But what if all the insecures and the what ifs and the buts, okay? The ifs, ands, and buts. What about them? Uranus says, get rid of them, throw them away. You don't need this. Stop being hard on yourself and stop being worried. Stop worrying. And Saturn is definitely going to cause us the moment to pause and worry and not necessarily feel comfortable in stepping forward. So we have to navigate, and this is what we've been doing all year. Yeah, maybe the first few months of the year it wasn't like this, but now we have been through the mill with, well, what am I supposed to do? Should I step forward? Should I hold back? Should I be responsible? Should I take a risk? Should I be the old stalwart and stay the way I have? But my heart is dying to break free. So each of us, somewhere in our lives, and maybe in multiple places in our lives, has to, embrace the change and satisfy the part of us that is not willing to change or is afraid to change. Now, it's an interesting dynamic because in my own life, there's places where, like, I'll use myself as an example because I'm closest to me, right? There are places where I could step forward and take a risk, which could be considered a risk, but that risk is not a risk for me because it means I am taking the same old path I have taken time and time again. And it might look like a risk on the surface, but when I think about my life and my history, it isn't a risk. It's exactly what I've done over and over and over again. And so what's the risk? Trusting that I don't need to make that move, that I need to just sit back and be patient and gather my strength for the moment when I know that something is going to unfold. If you're questioning something, if you keep asking yourself over and over again, should I be doing this? Should I not be doing it? If you're asking yourself, then you should just put it on the shelf. And because when you're time to take the leap, when you know, you absolutely know. There is no, should I, shouldn't I can't make up my mind. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. What am I supposed to think? Blah, blah, blah. No. When you know you're supposed to, like when I knew I was coming to Costa Rica, I knew I was coming to Costa Rica. There was no, well, maybe I shouldn't do this. Like there were days when I said, what am I, nuts? But that was a leap of faith. Taking this, that was a surefire leap of faith. And I still had my safety net and I could go back to New York if I wanted to. But I knew first night I was here, I said, I'm never leaving. So that is a really good example of absolutely knowing it's time to take the leap. If you're wavering, then it's not time to take the leap. Okay? So you have to acknowledge and embrace what pattern you have used over and over, time and time again, and know that it is not the one you want to do, but you will break the pattern. Thank you, Uranus. And you just need to be aware of what your pattern is, because each of us is struggling with that right now. And there's a lot of trust involved, a lot of trust, and navigating the trust, understanding what we're trusting. Remember what I just said about me. My own life is I have done this particular thing and taken the risk, and because, other people didn't. So I just stepped forward and did it. It's like, let me handle this for you. If you want something done right, you just do it yourself, right? No, you got to trust that the universe is going to line this up for you, Deb. So that's, there are times when we don't take control. Saturn is a bit controlling. Saturn is very controlling. Uranus is controlling in some ways, but not like Saturn is like, I have this under control. It's a very paternal energy. It's like the father who has everything under control, the parent that has everything under control. The leadership that has everything under control. And there's that, the boss, the authority figure, that's Saturn. It's the part of us that wants to control the situation. Well, let me just handle it because my assistant can't do the job. So let me just do it. I don't want to hire an assistant because in that time I could just do it myself. That kind of thing. Maybe it is time to hire an assistant. That would be a leap of faith, right? That means you got to manage somebody. Oh my God, manage somebody. When the moment arrives, you will know. Christmas Eve is the last Saturn square Uranus. And, they're going to do some dance next year, but we'll get to that. Right now, we are dealing with, approaching the last Saturn square Uranus, which is going to be Christmas Eve in my region of the world. So, meanwhile, our lovely, beautiful goddess Venus has moved into Capricorn. And I told you that this was happening last week, and I did a whole number about how she was going into retrograde. Now, Venus moved into Capricorn, and she's, pretty slow there. She's not zipping through Capricorn because she's going to be there for 4 months. November, December, January, February. She'll leave late February, early March and go into Aquarius. But she's really not going anywhere. Really, really early March. Really, she's not going anywhere. She's staying in Capricorn. So she is useful to us in Capricorn because on the one level, if you want to get your finances in order, that's a good time to do it. If you want to hire an assistant, maybe that one actually I would, if you're going to do that right now. Do that right now. Anyway, you don't want to do it during eclipses. Anyway, Venus in Capricorn gets organized. And she wants to be secure in her relationships. She wants someone who's, an adult and responsible. And she wants a love partner who is a mate, a real mate, an on-the-level mate. And if there is someone you are seeking, if you are seeking a relationship right now, perhaps that Venus in Capricorn is something you should ponder, because Venus in Capricorn is really about the experience of like loyalty and a strong partner and a partner who won't fail you and is your support system and is really a good connection. Now, Venus in Capricorn, like every sign, has her insecurities, and it is a Saturn ruled sign. It's where we once again have to confront our fears and anxieties and agitations and things, restlessness. But Capricorn is pretty stable, and Venus there is pretty stable, except, when she's going to go retrograde, she's going to slow down a whole lot toward the end of this month and into next month. She's going to pass through most of Capricorn, and then she's going to stop with Pluto. And she's going to connect with Pluto on the 11th of December, which, by the way, this year has flown by, is like 2 minutes from now. So, I'm going to give my typical advice of Venus in retrograde. Try not to start any new relationships under Venus retrograde. That starts the 19th. It may be that you meet a beautiful stranger, as my one friend said the other day, a dark, handsome, brooding stranger, a dark, attractive, brooding stranger. When Venus conjuncts Pluto on the 11th, but it could be that you have an intense encounter with someone. And then once she goes retrograde, there may be an intense encounter with someone from the past. Now, that's up to you to decide whether or not that's good or not, fulfilling or not. So one of the things that we also don't want to do when Venus is retrograde is when we We buy some bauble, some expensive bauble. You don't want to buy, like, if it, don't get engaged. Don't buy an engagement ring during a Venus retrograde. Don't get engaged during Venus retrograde. Don't get married during Venus retrograde. It's not a good thing. It's not really the best. Although, there are exceptions to the rule. There are, and if you have a person in your life who has been the exception in the rule to the rule, then you may need to follow the exception. Venus is not any sort of detriment or fall in Capricorn at all. So it's just the retrograde that could be complicated. And so that's really where we need to be careful. It's a good time to review your finances. It's a really good time to go back over, your checkbook and your banking and, thinking about, I wouldn't make new investments, but save them for maybe February and March. And just maybe review. It's a time like any other retrograde. It's the RE we're paying attention to. The review, the revisit, the reconnect, the reestablish. Review is a big one. Review your finances during a Venus in Capricorn retrograde. That's a very good thing to do. It's year end. It's a time when you do that. Now, again, we're not in Venus retrograde till the 19th of December. So the other thing is, you like someone said to me today, oh, you mean if you might have money, but you can't access it? Exactly. That could be something that's happening. You have money, but you can't access it. For some reason, there's the check is lost in the mail. So maybe something weird is happening, That's one thing. I would be careful about your purchases. If, it's a great time to get a discount. It's a fantastic time to get a discount. I've gotten great discounts on things I wanted or things that were really exciting under a Venus retrograde. That's great. Go antique shopping, especially in Capricorn. Great. Old things, discounted old things. Fantastic. I would buy some sparkly new car under Venus retrograde, I wouldn't necessarily redecorate the house. I also, I had a client that did some facial treatment, not a just like a microdermabrasion or something, but it was something they'd never done before. This was a bunch of years ago. And her face got scarred, and not permanently, but she was embarrassed. She was broken out and stuff. No new facial treatments under Venus retrograde. No new, don't change hairdressers. Don't change hairdressers under Venus retrograde. That's not something you want to do. No brand new beauty treatments under Venus retrograde. Okay. So that's something you want to be aware of. Meanwhile, so those are my tips for the moment. She's not going retrograde for a while. She's in Capricorn. These are things to ponder. But the other consideration is she's already in the sign of her retrograde. And she won't get to her shadow for a little bit yet, but she's already in the sign. So the vibes are hanging in the air. I'm already seeing things happen that are relative to the retrograde, because we see things that are going to be announcements that are made about things that are happening in advance. And so we start to become aware of what the retrograde could connect to. Now, in the meantime, this week, we are in an interesting week. As always, this week, Wednesday's the hot day, and then Saturday also. So let's talk about Wednesday first. Wednesday, so Mercury, as I said, is zipping through Scorpio, and it's going to meet up with Mars. So Mars has been there for several weeks, and it's going to meet up with Mars on Wednesday in around the time you get up in the morning, my region of the world, sometime around 7 a.m., my region of the world. And it's going to meet up with Mars on Wednesday. But the interesting thing, this is a hot day. So they're going to meet together in Scorpio. And then Mars is going to be, both Mercury and Mars are going to go ahead and square Saturn. So they are going to come within, Mercury is going to zip through hi Mars, shake hands, have breakfast with Mars, and then walk on through and square Saturn a few hours later, like 4 hours later, and so, but it'll be in the air, believe me. And then Mars is going to square Saturn that night, just about when I'm getting ready for bed. So when we get up in the morning and then when we go to bed that night in this region of the world anyway, you're going to know that there's going to be a lot of activity on Wednesday. So I would try to be flexible on Wednesday. Now, the interesting thing is this is all happening in fixed signs. Mars is in Scorpio, Mercury is in Scorpio, Saturn is in Aquarius, and they are going to come along and square Saturn. So that's a challenging aspect. And what's going to happen is Mercury's communication. It's going to go visit with Mars. They're going to have breakfast. And Mars and Mercury are like a vitamin shot of communication. So you are going to get some sort of vitamin shot of communication, and it might be like, and then it's going to square Saturn. And what's happening at the same time of all of this now when it squares Saturn, it's uncomfortable. And here we are again being provoked. The provoking of Saturn, like the sun did a week ago. We're provoking Saturn again, except this time it's Mercury and Mars. And they are gonna, that's a little bit of a challenge, a little harsh energy to square Saturn. And we may feel suffocated, we may feel stopped, we may feel agitated. That's, what we've got to contend with Wednesday. But to double whammy it, the other thing that's going on is the moon is going to be in Aquarius. So the moon is going to meet up with Saturn. So that means that when Mercury and Mars are talking to each other, the moon is also talking to Mercury and Mars all morning in my region of the world. So that means we've got 4 planets in a kerfuffle. In a kerfuffle. So Mercury and Mars are over here in Scorpio, like energy, power, intensity, passion. And then there's the moon, which is in cool and groovy Aquarius. And it's going to be like, it's coming up to Saturn. And it's like, stifle your emotions, hold your breath. And then come Mercury and Mars, and they come like bulldozers. Mars is like a bulldozer to Saturn. And they are all going to get triggered by this moon in Aquarius, So moon in Aquarius wants to remain cool, wants to remain detached, wants to remain non-committal. But it's going to get entangled with Mercury and Mars. So try not to lose your temper. Try not to lose your peace. What you need to do is use the energy. Use the Mercury and Mars. There's the agitation again. Mars is excitable. So exercise, stretch, walk, converse with friends, talk to people, connect with people, give yourself expansion, room to expand. Don't be hard on yourself. Take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself and communicate with people. If you feel under the gun, if you feel pressured, and this is a pressure-oriented aspect, talk to someone. Talk to a friend. Give a friend a call, Give an astrologer a call. I'm always available. So you can always contact me. But in the meantime, we're dealing with some very, intense energy. And I tend to think what we've been through in the last week may get re-triggered. And the other reason for that is Mercury is going to, just in a few days, from Wednesday to Saturday, retrace where the sun and the moon went. So the sun especially. So the Mercury is going to retrace the sun's steps by squaring Saturn on Wednesday and then opposing Uranus on Saturday. And that is why I said those are the 2 days when it's interesting, because we just had this experience from the sun, and I watched people and myself get agitated and restless and wanting to use this energy somehow. Now, Mercury is a little more high-strung than the sun. The sun is our life force, yes, but Mercury is like your brain. And if you want to turn off your brain this week, then I suggest you spend a lot of time meditating and get connected to your core self and listen to yourself. Because when Mercury is doing this little dance, it wants It wants attention, and it wants us to be listening and paying attention to what's going on. Okay? So, Mercury isn't just about talking, it's about listening too. It's about the act of listening. So, we have to listen to our instincts, we have to listen to what's happening to us. In the meantime, the sun is going to make a very lovely aspect to Neptune, and that is on the Friday the 12th, and it's going to make a trine because it's in a water sign. And this is, we're in the middle of Scorpio right now. We're in the middle of, the sun being in Scorpio. Like at this moment, we are at 15 degrees. So we're halfway through Scorpio season. And so water sign to water sign, the sun is going to trine Neptune on Friday. And that should smooth things over a little bit. And, the other thing is that when the moon and the, Mars and Mercury are all getting involved with Saturn, Moon is eventually going to go over Jupiter on Thursday, and so it'll shake out some of that energy, and that's actually very good. Eventually, Mercury will get to Jupiter, but not just yet. Now, we are preparing for a few things. We're preparing for, Mars eventually to oppose Uranus, just the way the sun did. So anything going in Scorpio right now is going to oppose Uranus. First, it's going to square Saturn, then it's going to oppose Uranus. And each of them is going to take the same path the sun took. So we're getting this area of the zodiac retread and retread. But I like that we have this little sunshine thing happening where the sun trines Neptune, and that should help us listen to our instincts and our intuition and to tune into what feels good. And what you really want to do is take a step back, and I'm always telling you to do this, right? Take a step back and really listen to your heart and where you are. We are in water. We are in a lot of water, okay? Again, we're back where there's not a lot of fire in the sky. And as I, sit here working on this podcast, the moon is leaving Sagittarius, where it's been the last couple days, and we're not dealing with a lot of fire. That was the bit of fire we got was this moon in Sag, which is lighthearted. Now, we are going towards the eclipses. The first eclipse is the 19th, and that is at the very end of Taurus, Scorpio. So the cycle of Scorpio before we go into Sag it's going to be the Taurus full moon, and that's the 19th, and that's the eclipse. And that is going to be early, the wee hours of Friday, the 19th, but we're going to talk more about that next week. Eclipses are intense and powerful. They bring things to the table. So, it will be out of the realm of Uranus. It will be closer to Jupiter, actually, because, the moon will have squared Jupiter the day before, and the sun will have squared Jupiter several days before, on the 13th or the 15th. But what we're getting is this experience of Jupiter sort of being involved with the sun and the moon in that eclipse. And it is a lunar eclipse. It is a partial lunar eclipse, okay? It's the beaver moon. And so, once again, with starting things, this is a rough time to start things because if you start something, my teacher used to say between two eclipses, that's the 19th of November and the 3rd of, maybe the 4th, depending on where you live, the 4th of December. He says he always used to say it's like a miscarriage. It's like a drop through, like something. It just doesn't take root, And so I have found that we're like, oh, let's start something. Let's start this, and it's doesn't root because it was happening you got that idea during two eclipses. And unfortunately, I like to think that we're above and beyond this and we can transcend this, but sometimes these rules do apply. And I would love to see one day when I start something between two eclipses and it actually takes root and becomes something. But it's something to say for the arrangement between the sun and the moon. Now, eclipses are energetic. Again, this is a highly energetic month. Mercury opposite Uranus is going to be energetic. Mars opposite Uranus is going to be energetic. Mars opposite Uranus is going to occur 2 days before the eclipse. That next week, so next week we have a lot to talk about, so make sure you tune in because we have a lot of things going on that week. So it's very powerful, very powerful. And if you want your life to change, then by all means, step on the accelerator and let it change. As far as the moon, it's going into Capricorn any minute, where I am right now, but it's going to be in Capricorn tonight, Capricorn tomorrow, partially Capricorn in the most of the wee hours of the morning on Tuesday, and then it will go into Aquarius. Actually, it's going to be void quite a bit on Tuesday, and then go into Aquarius Tuesday evening. Wednesday's a more motivated day, even though there's a lot of aspects and a lot getting done. So then there's Thursday, where the moon is still in Aquarius. We'll change over to Pisces, but again, it's going to be like a 12-hour void after the moon on Thursday goes over Jupiter. That's the last aspect, which is a good aspect, and then it's going to go into Pisces like later on, that really in the wee hours of Friday morning, and then it'll be in Pisces and Pisces again on Saturday, and then void late Saturday night into Sunday morning when it goes into Aries. So it's when we're sleeping in this region anyway, and it's the weekend, so avoid moon in Pisces when you're sleeping on the weekend is not a thing to think about. And then the moon will go into Aries, but that moon in Aquarius is going to trigger Saturn, and it's the same time that Mars and Mercury are going to trigger Saturn. So just get through Wednesday and work with the energies. And if you feel agitated, use the energy up. Journal, meditate, walk. If meditating so slow, do some walking. Clear your mind, clear your head, go out into nature. It's the static cling of Uranus. The static cling of the electricity, the static electricity of Uranus will do good to go stand in the grass. Okay, stand on the grass and let yourself connect to Mother Earth. And if there's no grass where you are because it's autumn, then stand on the earth. Stand on the earth. Barefoot if you can. If you can bear if it's cold, just go out and stand in the earth. Try to do that as much as possible and get grounded, and that's going to help you. And that's about it. Now, I say I am having this webinar next Sunday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It is my Fifth Dimension Reiki webinar. And please, if you'd like to sign up, go to my website, go to Astrologer's Thoughts, click on Astrologer's Thoughts, and the first blog posting is my webinar. If you are interested and you are a little bit lost or you have a question, email me, info@thegoldenastrologer.com or deb@debmcbride.com. You can connect with me. My website is thegoldenastrologer.com. You can book online for the webinar. Booking online just involves, finding the webinar on the list of items to book and just clicking on it and booking. If you're confused, you can email me. You can connect with me on Instagram, The Golden Astrologer. And in the meantime, we will see each other next Sunday before the webinar. So I wish you a beautiful week and have a lovely, lovely Wednesday. And, connect with yourself, journal, be listening to yourself. It's one of those weeks when we need to listen strongly, okay? And connect with your thoughts and just, raise your own awareness to a level that is going to rise above any sort of agitation that the planets may offer you. So that energy is there to be used. Let's use it wisely and properly. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next Sunday. Have a beautiful week.